Welcome to the jungle, folks. It gets worse here every day, particularly if you're talking about heat, particularly if you're talking about the east, because summer is coming and it is going to hit like a ton of bricks. You're about to hear all of the greatest hits, summertime catchphrases, mega torch, death ridge, heat dome, heat wave, you name it, we got it. We're looking at all of it, folks, and it is coming. I hate to have to tell you that, but sometimes I got to tell you what's going on, even when I don't like to talk about it, because that's my job. I got to keep you informed, just like I got to tell you about, for the 4,376 times, severe weather is in the forecast again today and tomorrow and the next day. Some of you are going to see tornadoes, strong winds, and large hail. We've got a level 3 enhanced risk. We're going to take a look at that. We're going to have your weekend update. You going out to the beach this weekend? You need to know what to expect. We've got your beach forecast. We've even got a tropical system, a hurricane, major hurricane, making landfall. We're going to show you that, as well as take a look at the long range, and it is severe asphalt, surging, scorching heat. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to get into all of it, take a look at the sun and see if it's going to shoot any more solar flares our way, and look at the geological update too. So we've got it all right here. This is Cold Rain's Weather World, and we've got all the weather. Thank you for joining us. Mitch West, my friend, is on vacation, so if you're popping over from his show, welcome aboard. He is out through Sunday. Gerald and I are taking over, and we're going to tell you what's going on, and we're going to start the show today with the severe weather outlook. If you haven't yet subscribed, we're over 820 subscribers, folks. Thank you for subscribing. Pray for you all every single day, and let me know if there's anything specifically I can pray over for you about. Happy to do that. Pray for me too. Hit the like button and share the video if you like the content. Trying to evolve this, make this a fun show, and we cover everything here, all the weather aspects of the weather. We're going to get started here with the severe weather threat today. Look at this. Up here in the mid-Atlantic, New Jersey down to Richmond, so we're looking at Philadelphia up here toward close to New York City, all the way down in toward Richmond is where the main threat is focused, but anywhere from Burlington up here into northwestern Maine down into Charlotte, North Carolina, close to where I live here in Morganton, we're looking at high winds, potentially, and some hail as well. Those are the main threats. Could see a few tornadoes, though, in the mid-Atlantic region. Isolated reports of severe weather not out of the question all the way back in Arkansas. Some of that's related to that bow echo that's moving through this morning. We'll look at that here again in a minute. And a slight risk up here in the northern plains in the Midwest, where we're going to see a system work out of Canada and interact with some buoyancy up here. So unstable air, plenty of energy around this area that to fuel a system that's going to come through later, potentially organize and get into severe wind mode. So we're going to watch that, particularly tomorrow. We're going to see another option there. So wind, looking at the broadest chance for wind, or the biggest risk, is up here in the mid-Atlantic, where you can see 30% possible probabilities of wind within 25 miles of a point, 15% hail up here, tornado again. Small chance of tornado, but we've got wind shear and a boundary, and there's always a question of whether or not enough spin will happen when you have that. So you have to at least look out for tornadoes, folks. So this afternoon, taking a look here at our surface map, there's that low pressure up here in the Great Lakes with frontal boundary extending back from that. We've got some wind shear working in, low-level jet strengthening up here in New England. So we're going to see plenty of instability. Look at all of this. So anywhere from the northern plains back into the southern plains, kind of in an arc like this, we can see showers and thunderstorms. There's a severe weather threat. A little bit of chance for excessive rain here in West Virginia, where we can see some training of cells. But look at the instability this afternoon. Really going to crank up here across the plains and across the East Coast. You can see the maximized instability axes here. There's one and there's another one. Unfortunately, it's if you want thunderstorms, it's capped back here in the southern plains, so we're not going to see a lot in the way of shower and thunderstorms there, but certainly that boundary moves through. We're going to see that boundary activate the instability in the atmosphere, produce showers and thunderstorms, and another little system working in the northwest is going to produce showers and thunderstorms up there too. Tomorrow afternoon, you can see the instability again just explode across the plains. A more robust shortwave is looking to move into the plains, northern plains into the Midwest tomorrow, and really crank up potentially a wind threat, but not much else happening outside of that severe weather-wise. We'll look at that. But high temperatures this afternoon, really going to bake this afternoon across much of the south. 90s making it all the way up into New England, a little bit cooler here behind that where the clouds and rain are associated with that low pressure today, but 90s down here in the southeast, up to mid 90s, upper 90s into the plains, hundreds in the desert southwest, very, very hot down there. Temperatures running 115 to maybe 120, cooler up in the Pacific Northwest. Future radar this afternoon. Here's what we've got this morning. We put this on into motion. Rain, thunderstorms starting to break out along the spine of the Appalachians back into the deep south, and a little bit more activity up here heading out of Wisconsin to the UP of Michigan. But look here in the northeast, thunderstorms breaking out into New York, into Boston, down in toward close to Boston, down toward Philadelphia, back through the western portion of Virginia as we get on into 2 o'clock this afternoon, back in toward Atlanta. You folks are starting to see supercells develop potentially, and then those will quickly organize into clusters. We're looking at mostly clusters. Supercells are not going to be all that common. We just don't have enough shear to have rotation that we need for supercells, but still plenty of showers and thunderstorms as we get on in toward 8 p.m. Those will be moving into a line, congealing into a line, moving through the Piedmont of the Carolinas, really probably out of our hair up here in the mid-Atlantic by that time. So the greatest threat in the mid-Atlantic this afternoon is really in the let's call it the 4 o'clock, the 3 o'clock to 4, 5, 6 time frame, and then a little bit farther to the south. Now, I will say that some of the other models have a little less activity down here in the south. So if you believe the HRRR model, not a lot's going to happen here. This is the rapid refresh. It's done a pretty good job lately, so I'm a little bit more inclined to lean toward more activity down here in the Carolinas. But again, pay attention. You're going to see rain up here in the northeast as well. And as we go on out in time, you can see another cluster developing tomorrow, moving through up here. So that's what's happening with our severe weather threat, folks. Tomorrow, the threat shifts back into the northern plains again. What we're looking at is energy kind of working along the top of a ridge. We're going to take a look at this ridge in a minute and how that's affecting our weather, but the storm track's over top of that, and as short waves around the apex of that ridge, they're going to be working with some highly unstable air to the south that's going to help organize the shear, and the instability is going to help organize outflows. They're going to pool together. We're going to get this big forward propagating wind event potentially up through this area. We probably will see an upgrade to a portion of the northern plains. Right now it's a little nebulous in terms of the track of this thing and the timing, so once that gets a little better defined tomorrow, my suspicion is that we'll see a bigger threat up here. But wind is going to be the primary threat. Look at this hatched area. Could see gusts 70 miles per hour if that system develops and moves through. This is going to be a pretty big event if that takes place. Hail, definitely a possibility too, with very cold lapse or steep lapse rates, very cold air aloft. Large hail, potentially baseball size or higher, and then thunderstorms as short waves track along boundaries up there. You'll have a tendency to have some spin, low-level jet coming in. It's really going to strengthen and help to provide plenty of energy for wind. So could be a fairly significant wind event up in this area, and not really ruling out tornadoes. So from Minot over into Minneapolis, over into Green Bay and places like that, really could see severe weather threat tomorrow. So pay attention as you go on through the day tomorrow. As we get on out into Saturday, same sort of scenario, maybe a little bit less of a threat right now as it looks, but we could see a couple of more short waves come in and produce some of these little clusters of thunderstorms that move through, bring a quick hitting wind event or two. Doesn't look as severe as Friday's threat. So pay attention to that, folks. Wind energy in the atmosphere. This is the 500 millibars, about 3.5 miles up. We're seeing the wind, and so you can see how this plays out this afternoon. Look at this is today. There's our trough. Out ahead of that's where we find lift. There's plenty of wind in the mid-levels to provide shear to help organize some of those thunderstorms. Big ridge coming into the central part of the country, and that's going to be a big factor in the weather coming up as we get on out in time. Look at that. There's the ridge, and as we get on out into tomorrow morning, you can start to see a little wind max coming through here. So tomorrow afternoon and evening, look at that. There it is. Boom, right there. That's what we're looking at as we get into overnight hours tomorrow. In the low levels, there's a jet down there too. So all of that's going to work together on an unstable air mass to produce this activity tomorrow. So that's what's going on as we get into the next couple of days from a severe threat. And now you can see that ridge really amplifying in the east, storm track over top of it. So that's what we're looking at, folks, from a severe threat. Tune back in tomorrow. We'll talk about tomorrow's threat a little bit more as it becomes becomes a little bit better defined. But if you're in the mid-Atlantic today, stay weather aware, pay attention, and up and down the eastern seaboard, watch what's going on. That brings us to our weather IQ question, folks. And today's IQ question stays with our earthquake theme, and I think it's going to be the last one in our earthquake theme for a while. But what is the instrument used to detect and record earthquakes? A barometer, a seismograph, an altimeter, or a geometer? Okay, if you know the answer, type it in the comment section. If you don't, the answer is going to be revealed at the end of the show. So hang out. We've got a lot of stuff coming up, folks. We're going to get right into the current weather leading into your weekend forecast. So stay tuned. All right, as we head on toward the end of the week, into the weekend, we're going to kick things off with our vapor loop, folks, and you can see moisture just streaming up out of the Gulf of Cold Rain, up and down the eastern seaboard through the Great Lakes. And look at this big moisture. You can see these bright green colors where moisture is making it way high into the atmosphere. Can you guess why that is? Yeah, that's a mesoscale convective system, big cluster of organized convection moving out of Tennessee down into the upper portions of the Deep South through Mississippi and Alabama, making it into Georgia too. So we're seeing a lot of shower and thunderstorm activity around those areas. Fortunately, not a lot of severe weather there. Low pressure up here in the Great Lakes moving toward the northeast, bringing showers and thunderstorms around the north of that into Michigan, up into Canada, and then shortwave energy moving out of the Pacific across the northern tier. Very, very dry, hot, and sunny out here in the southwest. And we can take a look at the radar image and confirm what I said. There's that thunderstorm complex moving into the deep south. Plenty of rain up here in Michigan as well, over into the provinces of Canada, just skirting portions of New England. A little shower activity up in Minnesota, down into Wisconsin as well. But that's what's going on out there today so far. Oh my goodness, check this out. Alerts map full of red, deep dark red up here in the upper Midwest. We're looking at temperatures approaching 100, getting into the upper 90s over the next few days. So extreme heat watches are up. Extreme heat warnings are up in the desert Southwest, where we're seeing temperatures get up into the mid 110s, so around 115 to maybe even approaching 120 over the next couple of days. Red flag warnings out here in Utah and Nevada and New Mexico in the front, and actually in the Rocky Mountains here, where we're going to see gusty winds, dry conditions, and hot weather. Better not burn anything at all out here. Some heat advisories up as well. In the plains. Looking at winds this afternoon, very windy across the area I just showed you with the red flags up. We could see 30, 40 mile per hour wind gusts out there into the plains, front range of the Rockies, gusty winds in 20s, maybe 30 miles per hour out here, and also into the Great Lakes, Ohio Valley, and up and down the eastern seaboard, where we could see gusty winds outside of thunderstorms approaching 15 to 25 miles per hour. Air quality alerts, folks, we don't have a ton of those today, but if you're sensitive to fine particulates, things like that, Kansas City, Denver, New York City, Salt Lake, Las Vegas, and down into Los Angeles and Southern California, you could see a little air stagnation and have some air quality issues. So if you're sensitive to that, pay attention there and maybe limit your time outside. Temperatures this afternoon, if you can call it relief, 70s up here in the northern part of New England, up in Maine, and then behind the front, that's behind that low pressure system, as it moves through, we're going to see a little bit of a northwesterly flow, bringing a little cooler air into the Ohio Valley, temperatures in the 70s, but 90s making it all the way up into southern New England. We find mid 90s up and down the eastern seaboard into Florida, and then big heat out here in the plains, where we're seeing 90s push toward the Canadian border, back in toward the upper 90s, particularly hundreds as you get out here into the desert Southwest, with 115 degrees, 116 near Phoenix, Tucson 113, Death Valley probably getting toward 120, and then a little bit cooler in the Pacific Northwest, where we find a little trough working in up there. And that is your end of the week forecast. Let's take a look at the weekend outlook. All right, so temps Friday, Saturday, Sunday, not great unless you love heat. Look at this, Central Plains. Big heat out here, hundreds, over 100, pushing 105 as we get on up into Pierre, South Dakota, folks. This is very, very hot. 90s making it near the Canadian border again. Warming up out in the Ohio Valley. A little cooler up in New England behind that low pressure, but don't get used to that. That's going away quick and fast and in a hurry. Very, very warm across the south, and then chilly up in the Pacific Northwest. Again, we could see a few snow showers in the higher elevations up there. Getting on into Saturday, very, very warm across much of the nation. Same story, hundreds in the plains, hundreds in the desert southwest, getting warmer and warmer through the Mississippi Valley southeast, warming up in the northeast, cooling off in the northwest. And then look at this, 90s and hundreds for everybody until you get up into New England, where it's still hanging on to 80s. Bless your hearts, but give it a couple more days and we're in for it out there too. So look at this, 50s in the Montana area. So places like the Bitterroots over to the Bighorns going to be a little bit chillier up in here, folks. But that's your temperature outlook over the next 3 days. Surface map tomorrow, I've got that area of severe weather we talked about before, where we're going to see an MCS kind of move through and potentially bring an organized wind threat to portions of the upper plains and Midwest. That'll be ongoing Saturday night or Friday night and possibly affect some portions of the northern Great Lakes up here in the UP of Michigan Saturday morning. Frontal boundary across the apex of that ridge up north. Again, a few snow showers possible in the higher elevations in the northwest. Air quality alerts just west of the Four Corners region, and a few showers not out of the question. Thunderstorms still lingering across the northern tier over top of that ridge next to the low pressure, particularly up here in Maine. That frontal boundary will be clearing the coast everywhere else, with the exception of back in the southeast, where we could see in the southern portion of the country it's going to be a little slower to clear, so we'll have some moisture pooling. A few showers Friday afternoon. Thunderstorms not out of the question. As we get on into Saturday, though, folks, look at this. So let me roll this back because I've already rolled it forward one time. Saturday morning, we should see that, as I said, overnight. Friday night, we're going to have that little cluster of storms push through the northern tier. A few more pockets of shortwave energy are going to traverse the top of that ridge. A couple of scattered showers about maybe in the deep south, but that's just about it. As we go on through Saturday, though, look at this. All this white space, remember all this the other day was filled up with showers and thunderstorms. Now Saturday evening looks very, very good for almost everybody in the country, with the exception of the Pacific Northwest. So if you've got outdoor plans, you'll be able to do them. Just carry some water with you and try to stay under a shelter or something, because it is going to be hot as we get on into Saturday and Sunday. Sunday, overnight, Saturday night, we got that little cluster of storms probably propagating somewhere into Maine, the northern part of New England. A few more short waves passing over the northern plains could spark shower and thunderstorm activity on Sunday, maybe an organized severe weather event along the border there as well. But most of the rest of the nation stays high and dry and hot. And what's driving that, of course, is what we've been talking about the last few days. Big ridge. Look at this big ridge of high pressure. You can see that just set up right here over the Ozarks, essentially dominating flow for much of the country in a clockwise fashion, just like that. And as we go on through Saturday and Sunday, it really just progresses slightly to the east, but your storm track's going to be over top of that. So you can see big trough coming into the west. That's why there's unsettled conditions there, and cooler weather to the north of this big bright boundary. That's your upper level wind. So north of that, it's going to be a cooler. Along this flows your storm track. So your storm track's going to look something like this as we go out into next week. Early part of the week, late part of the weekend. That's how the storm track's going to be as long as this ridge is in place. And that's where your storms are going to move. Everything below that, very, very isolated in nature if you get anything at all. And above that and along that's where you're going to see energy move and potentially work on some of the moisture and heat that's up there to produce a couple of those MCSs and maintain that severe weather threat over the northern tier. So we'll watch that in the coming days. But that's what's going on over the course of the weekend, folks. We're going to take a look at the long range here in a minute and a look at the tropics. But before we do that, let's take a look at your beach forecast. If you're heading out to the beaches, hey, let's see what we've got going on there. All right, so you're planning to get away from the heat by taking a trip down to the beach for a little weekend getaway. Well, you can check out this site from the National Weather Service. It tells you about the weather for most of the beaches that you'd be interested in going to. If we take a look at a couple of these, just click on an umbrella here and it'll take us to that particular area, and you can click on any of these umbrellas and it'll tell you the forecast. And so if we take a look at Asbury Park, look at this. Saturday, Sunday, looking good. Highs in the low 80s. And mostly sunny, so looking pretty good up here in the northern sections. My suspicion is it probably will for most of these areas. Let's say you're going down to Wrightsville Beach, southern North Carolina. Take a look at that. Yeah, again, 20% chance on Saturday highs in the mid 80s, very nice conditions. Probably Florida, that front's cleared by now, so we're probably looking at good conditions up and down. Florida's probably a little bit of a different story. We get on down here and take a look at it, a little bit more in the way of tropical moisture, so we'll probably see more shower and thunderstorm activity. So highs in the mid 80s again along the beaches, with a little bit better chance of showers along the east coast of Florida. But you can go to this page, it's just weather.gov/beach, and see anything that you want to see in terms of beach weather. And you can go to this and take a look at the water temperature. So if we're up here, let's say Asbury Park, if I can find that again and click on it, you gotta do it quick or it goes away. There it is, Staten Island, Coney Island. Let's take a look at that. 65.7. Woo, that's cold. Too cold for cold rain. I don't like that. If we get on down here off the east coast, southeast coast, let's see what we're talking about. 81.3 down here at Brunswick. So I'll take that. So you can see as you get on down to the south, the water temperature is going to warm up. So you can go to this site too, seatemperature.org, and take a look at sea temperatures there. And that's your beach forecast, folks. Looks pretty good if you're planning on heading out to the beach. Now we're going to take a look at the tropics and see if anything's brewing there. Hint, the GFS says yes. Well, as we know, the GFS most always says yes to big winter storms and big hurricanes too. And once again, it's doing its thing in the Gulf. Here we go. We've got 270 hours on the map, and we're going to advance that along. And look at this big tropical storm turning into a major hurricane, rolling in toward Galveston, up toward Dallas, just crushing everything in its path. Thank you, GFS, for playing. GFS does some really cool things with winter storms, and we'll talk about those when it's time as well. But that's what it's showing. But what is the National Hurricane Center showing, I wonder? Actually, I don't wonder, because I'm pretty sure I know what it shows. And of course, no tropical cyclone is expected over the next 7 days. And if you look out into the Atlantic, of course in the Gulf, there's not really much of anything to develop into a tropical solution, only in the mind of the GFS. However, the Eastern Pacific has seen plenty of development so far, and tropical storm, actually hurricane, it's still hurricane. Hurricane Eric will get into a tropical storm. It'll turn into one of those here soon, but it's making landfall down here in Mexico. And check this out. It made landfall as a Category 4 storm, and you can see that eye coming in right ashore right there. And it is, haven't seen any reports of devastation yet, but I'm sure there will be, because that was a very, very tight storm as it moved on in. It's weakening now, as you can see, but no other additional activity is expected in the Pacific except for this little cluster here, and the waters have kind of been overturned, so just a small chance of formation the next several days. Out in the Central Pacific, nothing going on there either. And that's your tropical update. Long range outlook time, folks, and the outlook is grim unless you love, love, love heat, or unless you live in the western third of the country, particularly the Pacific Northwest. But we're starting out here Monday morning. Look at this big Death Ridge, the mega torch. Here it is in all its glory over the eastern half of the nation, trough out to the west. And of course, when you see this configuration, this is your flow, and around the flow of this ridge, that is the storm track, as we talked about before. But anywhere in this ridge, just dominated by hot, hot, hot weather. There's your trough back here, and so that's what we're going to look at and see if that moves, strengthens, weakens, what have you, as we go on out in time. We get on out into Tuesday here. Not a lot of movement, but maybe slightly weakening, and as we get on in, look at this 594 decameter ridge. That's big time, folks, and it's centered in just the right spot to maximize the heat over the southeast. It starts to, in terms of its intensity, wane over time. Then that was down, we get on out here toward Thursday, it's down to 591, and eventually way out into the long range, we start to see a trough. This is Tuesday, July the 1st. We start to get a little bit more troughing in the east, bringing potentially unsettled and weather and cooler conditions back into the east. The GFS, and this is the European ensembles, the GFS wants to keep the ridge kind of full continental. So we'll see how that plays out. A lot of uncertainty as we go on out in time. The 850 millibar temperatures, this gives you a really good idea how much above normal it's going to be at the surface. So lots of red colors in the east, so What does that mean? Hot, hot, hot in the east, cool colors out west, and of course it's going to be cooler out there. And over time, that persists. You can see, look at that big circulation. What a big ridge this is. We get on out here into next Friday. Again, that starts to diminish a little bit in terms of its intensity, and then we start to get finally some yellow colors as we get way on down the line. It's into ludicrous land where it's really hard to predict, but my expectation is very, very hot for the next 10 to 12 days. As a matter of fact, let's just have a little fun and look at the European ensemble. Oh, actually, this is not the ensemble. This is the operational run just for the east. It's going to be cooler out west, eventually warming up out there too. But anyway, in the east. Okay, so this is high temperatures as we go through next week. All right, so this is the high temperatures for Monday. Hundreds up in New Jersey, hundreds down to the Piedmont of North Carolina, and upper 90s everywhere else. This looks like a parking lot, folks. There's Tuesday, high temperatures, 106 near RDU, Raleigh, North Carolina, where they put the sensor right on the tarmac so you can get maximum exposure to it. It'll probably be 120 out at Raleigh, and still hundreds in the northeast. Look at that, finally getting some cooling off. We're only in the upper 90s in New Jersey now, but still hundreds back in the Piedmont of North Carolina, stretching back into Georgia. Hundreds again on Thursday. And let's see what Friday has in store. Hundreds again on Friday. What about Saturday? Are we cooling? Well, nope. Still some hundreds here on Saturday. What is that? 6 days with high temperatures in the 100. If that verifies, and it's probably not going to verify because the European run's a little hot, but a lot of soil moisture around too. It makes it a little harder to heat up to maximum heat when you have soil moisture the way we do because we had a lot of rain. But anyway, pay attention, folks. It's going to be very, very hot. That's the story. Maybe it's not going to be hundreds every single day in the Piedmont of these southeastern areas, but it is going to be very hot across the Midwest, the plains east into New England and the southeast and everywhere in between. Moisture is going to be prevalent too. Look at this. So as we get on out into Monday and next week, these bright green colors represent humidity. Think of it as humidity. It's just high dew points. You see it turn white a little bit. That's mixing. So as the temperature rises, the air from above sort of mixes down. You get wind, you get mixing, and brings some of that drier air to the surface. So you get a little relief from the humidity out here in some of these areas that are seeing hundreds, but still it's going to be super hot, super humid across much of the eastern portion of the country, folks. And that is your long range. That leads us into the final portion of our show, which is the solar and geologic update. As you may recall, the other day, the sun emitted an X-class solar flare, interfered with some radio operations, particularly out in the Pacific near Hawaii, and we've seen a couple of flares since then throw a couple of CMEs in the direction of our neighborhood. We're going to get a glancing blow from those. That's coronal mass ejection. May see some minor G1 geomagnetic storm conditions, but not anything major going on right now. A few filaments around, new sunspot turning in with some complexity. So we're going to watch that in a trans-equatorial coronal hole that is going to turn toward us and send out a wind stream toward us as well. So we're going to watch all of that. KP index is low, solar wind nominal, nothing going on there. Density picked up a little bit, but we've got that new sunspot activity down here turning in. It's just coming around the limb now, and you can see the magnetism here. It is negative, positive, negative, positive, negative, positive. So it's got some complexity to it. That's an indication that we could see some flaring as it turns towards. So we're going to watch that. Volcanic activity in the Pacific, a ring of fire. Not much going on here. Ahi, Great Sitkin Spur and Kilauea, the ones we've been watching. Nothing else going on. Not much happening earthquake-wise since that 5.1 the other day, but no damage reported from that as far as I know, and nothing else going on here, but we'll keep an eye on it. Moon phase, it's a waning gibbous moon, folks. Waning crescent, actually, my fault. So it's 41% headed down toward new moon phase, which will be June the 25th. And there is the moon and sun boundaries. Most of the civilized world under sunny skies. Sunny skies out here in Morganton, North Carolina today. We're watching for a few thunderstorms moving in later this afternoon. I know you folks in the mid-Atlantic region in particular need to keep your eye to the sky and stay weather aware as we go through the day. But that leads us into the answer to today's Weather IQ question. And the question, of course, was what is the instrument used to detect and record earthquakes? The answer is a seismograph. Okay, so that's what we use to detect earthquakes. A barometer is used to detect barometric pressure. So you probably know that an altimeter, and a geometer are a couple of other instruments. I'm not going to tell you what those are today because we might do another quiz on those later on. All right, so we will keep you up to date on all that. But one more thing you need to be aware of today: in 1910, Father's Day was celebrated for the first time in Spokane, Washington. In 1966, Lyndon B. Johnson made an official proclamation to designate the third Sunday in June as Father's Day. And then in 1972, Richard Nixon signed into law making it a permanent national holiday in the United States. One more thing. In 1978, the cartoon Garfield debuted by Jim Davis. I used to read that called the funny papers back in the day in the newspaper. People used to get newspapers and they fold them out, and there was, on Sunday particularly, you had a big section of comics, and we called it the funny papers. Anyway, that's a little Cold Rain tidbit, but I used to love Garfield, and that was one of my favorites, and it debuted in 1978, 4 years after Cold Rain was born. All right, so that is it. Now you know about comics. Now you know about the geologic and weather situation for the day, and I hope it's been a good show for you. Thank you for tuning in. We'll be back tomorrow with another Cold Rain's Weather World. In the meantime, this is Cold Rain, Jason Pritchard, reminding you that if other stations run 24/7, we got you covered right here, right now. 4814 at Cold Rain's Weather World. Take care, folks, and have a wonderful day.